Take any policy issue. It could be a technical one, like Social Security, or a controversial and ideologically heavy one, like abortion. In real life, these are typically grayscale issues. You can be in favor of abortion, but with certain exceptions. Or you can be against, except under certain medical conditions. Or you could be closer to the middle if you can see the pros and cons of both positions, or if you don't really care either way. In order to make a point, in this video we are going to pretend that these nuanced grayscale considerations don't exist, and that every issue is binary. On every question, you can only answer yes or no, left or right. So you're either all the way in favor of abortion, always, under all circumstances, or you are totally opposed to it, no matter the context. Those are the only two positions we will consider here. It gets more interesting when we add a second issue, such as gun control. In America, this is a big topic that gets people's blood boiling either way. Again, we will ignore any possible nuance and allow only two extreme positions. You either want no guns at all, or you want zero restrictions on gun ownership. The key is to look what happens when we bring these two dimensions together. They are completely independent of each other, so you end up with a total of 4 different positions. The thing is that only 2 of these positions are available in the two-party system in the US. That's a shame because the other 2 positions make a lot of sense, both morally and ideologically. If you prioritize freedom over anything else, you might argue that people should be able to do whatever they want. Want to have a gun? Go ahead. Want to have an abortion? Go ahead. This would be a kind of libertarian position that refuses to infringe on people's freedoms in any way. In the opposite corner, we might have someone who values human life above all else. Someone who believes that life is sacred would probably be opposed to abortion, but also to guns because, well, guns have a tendency to kill people. So both of these positions are reasonable and internally consistent. And yet, if you find yourself in one of these 2 corners as a US citizen, you are out of luck. The 2 political parties, at least the way they are currently configured, don't offer those particular combinations. In the voting booth, you will have to decide which of your precious opinions to betray. We can add a third issue, maybe something like renewable energy. Again, you either love solar panels or you hate them. In this space with 3 issues, you already have 8 different possible political positions you could take. Some of the combinations may make more sense than others, but you could probably argue for all 8 of them. Still, there are only 2 parties, and they have decided to pick a very specific position in this space. So your freedom is reduced from 8 down to 2. Every time we add a new issue, a new topic, we effectively double the total number of political positions available to you. These numbers, the powers of 2, grow incredibly fast. Just think about this. It only takes 33 binary issues to produce a total of 8 billion possible combinations. That's one for every person on the planet. The space of political opinion is huge and much more diverse than the simplistic blue-red spectrum would suggest. Politicians and media and even corporations want to place everyone on a one-dimensional line so that they can divide us into brackets that they can target more easily. But you are nowhere on this line. You are up in a much higher dimensional space. To make sense of this, think of each topic as a question that pulls you towards the left or towards the right. Imagine participating in a poll. You get a list of questions and you give a binary answer to each of them. Pro-abortion, you bounce to the left. pro-guns, to the right with you. After only 2 questions, there are 4 different paths that you can take. 2 of those paths lead to the same position on the spectrum at the bottom. So the spectrum doesn't accurately represent all of the different possibilities. Not only do your diverse opinions get ignored in the two-party system, this silly insistence on placing everyone on a single one-dimensional line doesn't even distinguish between 2 totally opposite paths anymore. If you happen to be pro-guns and pro-abortion, you end up in exactly the same bin as someone who is anti-guns and anti-abortion. And this is my main point. Since the political spectrum cannot distinguish between people with diametrically opposite views, what good is it? Why don't we just throw it out? When we add a 3rd question to the list, the number of paths doubles to 8. But there is room for only 4 bins on the left-right spectrum. And again, the bins in the middle contain people that took completely different paths. By now you can see where this is going. Imagine answering many of these strictly binary questions, one after the other, tracing your personal political path. As you make your way down, you bounce on each pin like a marble, jumping left or right at each turn. At the end, you land in one of the bins at the bottom. And that's the position on the political spectrum that the people in charge will try to assign to you. Here's another person, tracing out a different path. They might land in the same bin, or in a bin very close to yours. But what does that mean? It could mean that your paths were almost the same, give or take a few disagreements. But it could just as easily mean that you disagree on almost every question. The bin that you happen to land in doesn't say anything about who you are or what your political opinions look like. The political spectrum is completely useless, except of course if your goal is to convince people that there are only 2 options. Let's now drop a massive multitude of many more marbles. Each traces a unique individual path of opinions and lands in a bin at the bottom of the diagram. The shape that appears at the bottom is called a Gauss curve. It's very common in statistics. It's the shape you always get when you add up a large number of independent binary choices. If you want to see more examples, you can watch the companion video we made, where I explain the mathematics that leads from bouncing marbles to Gauss curves. In this video, I won't bother you with mathematics. I want to focus on the implications for society. Media articles and Twitter posts would say that the people over here are on the left. The ones over here are on the right. And this large group of people in the middle are centrists. Personally, I don't like the word centrist. To me, it suggests a gray mass of undecided, ignorant, or indifferent cowards who refuse to take a stand on anything. This label completely denies the sophistication, the subtlety, and political diversity of this group of people in order to fit them into a low-dimensional narrative. Due to the way I have set up the experiment here, there are no centrists in this diagram, only radicals. Every one of these individuals answered radically blue or radically red on each of the questions. The only reason they seem undecided is because we insist on summarizing dozens of answers with only a single point on a line. We turn people into cardboard cutout caricatures by projecting them from a complex high-dimensional space to a simplistic low-dimensional one. Eric Weinstein calls this low-dimensional space flatland. Geometrically, when you project objects onto a line, you flatten them, and you lose information about where the objects came from. I'm sorry, I promised you no more math, but I can't help myself. I think this reduction from diversity to simplicity happens by design. Political pundits want to oversimplify our opinions because it makes us easier to target and manipulate and pander to. But it's not just an innocent marketing trick. It's actually dangerous because it makes us viscerally hate our neighbors, friends and family members, even if they agree with us on almost every topic. The political spectrum forgets everything that's interesting about a person and reduces you to just a statistic on an artificial axis. Other than serving the purposes of politicians, media, marketeers, and grifters, there is one useful thing that this spectrum can do for us. It tells us where we can find the extremists. For most of us, the bin you happen to land in doesn't say anything meaningful about your political opinions. But extremists are an exception. If you land in one of the bins at the extreme ends of the spectrum, we know exactly what you have answered to every single question. You have blindly followed the dogma of your party at every turn. Now, it is of course possible that this really represents your personal opinion, but it's much more likely that you have simply programmed yourself to agree with everything your tribe says and does. You based your opinion not on free thought, but on submission to a doctrine. The irony is that such an extremist will often accuse the people in the middle of being extremists. This is because of the large distance between the edges and the center. Extremists look at this distance from the wrong end. They notice that the middle is very far away, and they mistake this as a sign that the centrists must be far right or far left. If you are sitting here at the far right edge of the curve, and you look at the huge number of moderates in the middle, they will probably all look like filthy communists to you. If, from your point of view, the vast majority of people seem racist or misogynist or homo-trans-Islamophobic, that might be because you are the one who's biased. You gave the exact same mindless, predictable, ideologically driven answer to every single question on the ballot. That's a form of bias and ideological blindness. When you're closer to the middle, like almost everybody, you get heat from both sides. We should learn to accept this as a compliment. When both kinds of extremists dislike us, it means that we think for ourselves, that we haven't been captured by an ideology. I hope I've managed to convince you that the political spectrum is quite useless and potentially dangerous. If you want a deeper look at the mathematics behind this argument, I quarantined all the technical details in a separate companion video. Please consider supporting our channel by liking or subscribing, and make sure to share this video with friends and family, so that we can start giving more credit to the true diversity of the politically moderate people in our society. In the meantime, whenever somebody asks you where you are on the political spectrum, the only reasonable answer seems to be nowhere.